Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my recipe for boiled and fried provisions, or what Guyanese people know as boil and fry. Now basically this dish consists of ground vegetables or root vegetables and provisions, and then they are boiled and then they're fried up with some onions, some hot pepper, and other seasonings. Today I'm going to fry them up with some eggs as well as some saltfish, but you can totally make this dish as per your taste and preferences. So let's get into the recipe, guys. The first thing you want to do is get a large heavy bottom pot, fill it up with some water about halfway, and you're going to bring it up to a boil. Once the water starts to come up to a boil, you're going to season it heavily with some salt. So the first thing you want to put into the water is your plantain. Now I am using half-ripe plantain. You could use the green one, you could use the ripe one already, but all I have on hand is the half-ripe. So you can use whichever one you have on hand. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it into the pot of water and you're going to let it boil for just about 5 minutes until it's a little bit cooked. Basically, we're going to add in the vegetables as per how long they usually take to cook. So the one that I have here, the plantain, takes the longest out of all that I'm going to be using today. So my plantain has been boiling for about 5 minutes at this point, and now I'm going to be going in with my chopped cassava. Now the cassava that I'm using has already been chopped, peeled, and then frozen, so they're going to take much quicker to cook than if you were using fresh cassava. If you were using fresh cassava, you might want to add it maybe 2 minutes to 3 minutes after you add in the plantains, so this way nothing overcooks and they cook evenly in the pot. Now once you put the cassava to boil, you're going to allow it to boil until it's about halfway tender. The reason why we're doing that is because after it's halfway tender, we're going to layer in some more vegetables so everything cooks evenly and properly. So what I'm going to do in the meanwhile is I'm going to prepare my duff, or the dumplings, to put into my boil and fry as well. So in my bowl here, I have some all-purpose flour. I'm going in with some salt as well as some sugar, and you can totally make your duff or your dumplings all depending on your own taste and preferences. I'm also going to go in with a little bit of black pepper, and I'm going to go in with some garlic powder. Some people make them plain. I've made them plain before and they taste just fine when you put them in the boil and fry, or you can season it up as I'm doing here. Do what you want with your own recipe. And once you've gone in with all of your seasonings that you would like to add, you're also going to go in with some baking powder. Now a quick tip when making your duff or your dumplings, the more baking powder, the better they will come out and the more fluffy they will come out. And once you've gone in with that baking powder and you give everything a little bit of a mix, you're going to go in with some softened butter as well as your warm water. Now you're going to stream the warm water in until you get a nice semi-soft dough. You want to do it as if you were making sada roti, and if you want a little bit of a reference, I'll have the sada roti video linked right up here in the right hand corner. You don't want to make the duff too soft, because what happens if the dough is too soft and sticky, once you add it in the water to boil, they actually will puff up really nicely, and then all of a sudden they will fall and then become very dense and hard on the inside. So you want to make sure the dough is a little hardish, but not too soft, and definitely not too hard either. So once your duff or your dumpling mixture comes together really well, and once it's not sticking to your fingers anymore, you're going to want to go ahead and set it to the side, cover it with a paper towel, a damp paper towel, and you're going to allow it to sit until you are ready to add it into your pot. So I finished mixing all of my duff, and by the time that was done, my cassava was about halfway done cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my sweet potatoes now. Now I'm using regular old sweet potatoes, also known as yams, but traditionally what is used is the white sweet potatoes, but I didn't have that on hand. So this is what I'm using because I have these in my refrigerator. So you're going to stir this up and you're going to allow them to cook until the sweet potatoes are nice and tender as well. So now my sweet potatoes are almost done cooking. They literally just need about 1 to 2 more minutes, and that's exactly how much time is perfect to add in the duff or the dumplings, because the duff or the dumplings only take about 1 to 2 minutes to cook and steam properly. So you want to go ahead and gauge that so this way the sweet potatoes do not overcook. As you guys can see, the plantains as well as the cassava or the yuca is missing from the pot. That's because I went ahead and I fished them out. They were cooking a little faster than usual, so I took them out so this way they wouldn't overcook. I also wanted to mention that, as usual, all of the ingredients and the measurements will be down in the description box down below, so you don't have to worry about going back and forth throughout the video to see what I used. It'll all be in one place down in the description box. I also wanted to mention that instead of boiling everything together and layering things in, if you find that that is too hard for you, what you can do is boil each vegetable that you're using separately and just fish them out of the water and then add in the next vegetable. That might be a little easier for any of you beginners who have not made this before. So at this point, I am going to add in all of my duff. Now, as you guys can see, they are like rough little balls. I basically broke off or tore off little pieces from that big dough ball, and I roughly rolled them into balls and I put them in. I truly appreciate the rough texture of the duff on the outside sometimes. I don't really like them perfectly round, but you can make them whatever shape that you want. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is cover it and let it steam for about 2 minutes until they are fluffy and they float to the top. After about 2 minutes, you're ready to see what your dumplings or your duff looks like in the pot. So after you open it up, they should have doubled in size and they should be floating on the top. Once they float on top, that is a good sign that they are done cooking. I'm also going in with a fork and pricking some of those sweet potatoes just to make sure they are done cooking and they are tender. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drain off these ingredients and I'm going to come back and show you what to do next. So I've drained all of my ingredients and I have my clean pot ready to go now. When making this violin fry, you need to have a heavy bottom pot or else the ingredients will not fry up or saute properly. So into the pot, I'm going in with some olive oil. You can use whatever type of oil that you want or that you use in your kitchen. And I'm also going to go in with some saltfish that I am crumbling up. Now, this is salted cod, and basically what I did is I boiled it a few times in some hot boiling water until it removed some of that salt content. You could also soak it overnight if you have the time to remove the salt. But basically what you want to do now is once you add it into the pot, you're going to fry it up or saute it until it gets a little bit golden brown. And this is adding a great flavor to my violin fry. But if you wanted to make this violin fry vegan, you can totally leave out the saltfish or the eggs that I'm using. After about a minute of that saltfish frying up a little bit in the pot, you're going to go in with a little spice mixture or a seasoning paste. Now what I have in my seasoning paste here is some ground garlic, some ground thick leaf thyme, as well as some hot pepper. Now you can use a green seasoning if you wanted to. I have that recipe on my channel and I'll have it linked right up here in the right hand corner. Or you can just go in with some chopped garlic, some hot pepper, whatever you have in your kitchen and that you want to use to season your violin fry. After about 6 minutes of cooking up in that oil, the saltfish as well as that seasoning paste has gotten nice and crispy and has some nice brown edges all over it. At this point, I'm going to go in with my sliced onions. Now, as you guys can see, it's a lot of sliced onions, but it's only because it's a lot of violin fry that this recipe is going to make. And so you want to flavor everything really nicely. So that's why I'm using a good amount of onions. After about another 3 minutes of cooking, you're going to see that the saltfish deepens in color even more and you get more crispy edges and your onions cook down just a bit. At that point, you can add in some Guyanese dried thyme, or you can go in with the American dried thyme or some fresh thyme, or you can totally omit it if you don't have any. And at this point, I'm going in with some beaten eggs. And if you wanted to make this vegan, again, you can omit the saltfish and omit the eggs. It's totally up to your preferences. Basically, what you're going to do now is you're going to stir up all of those eggs until it basically scrambles and properly cooks with the rest of the ingredients. After you've allowed the eggs to properly cook, you're going to start to layer in all of your boiled provisions. Remember, all of these provisions are already cooked, so basically all we're doing is stir frying it with all of the seasonings, the saltfish, and the eggs. So I first went in with my boiled dumplings or my duff, as well as the sweet potatoes. And at this point, I'm also going to go in with some freshly grated carrots. I love to add the carrots into my violin fry. It is not traditional at all, but I find that it gives a beautiful flavor and another type of textural element to the dish. So you can add them if you want, but if you don't, you can omit them as well. And after you stir in the sweet potatoes as well as the duff, you're going to go in with your boiled plantains as well as your cassava. The reason why I layered everything in and didn't just dump it all in at once is because I find that when I stir it in batches, everything gets more properly incorporated and you don't mash up any of the vegetables if they end up being soft. Remember, you want everything to be intact in the end. You don't want everything to be super soft and mushy. And at this point, I'm finishing it off with some scallions or green onions. And these are scallions that I've chopped up finely and I put them into my freezer. If you want to really keep your vegetables fresh, you can go ahead and chop them, wash them, and stick them in your freezer and they will stay for a really long time. And once you've gone in with those scallions, it is basically done. You have your violin fry all ready. Now there are other variations on how people make violin fry. Some people will just do a plain violin fry without the saltfish, without the eggs, and then they will serve fish curry with it or stewed fish with it. And honestly, that is another variation or type of way of eating this dish that I love as well. My violin fry is all done, and guys, I honestly don't know what is a better sight than this. This is an amazing dish. It is a hearty dish and something that only uses a few simple ingredients that you have in your kitchens, And these ingredients are great shelf-stable ingredients that you should have during this quarantine time. So during your next essential grocery trip, maybe pick up some of these ingredients so you can make some violin fry at home. So at this point, I'm going to give it a taste for salt and any other seasonings that I may want to add, and then it is ready to serve. So I hope all of you lovely people enjoyed this recipe today. This is something that I truly enjoy making for my family because it is a hearty meal and something we all love to eat. Adding the saltfish and adding the eggs adds another type of flavor and another textural element that I truly love. If you enjoyed this recipe today, go ahead and give it a nice big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you aren't subscribed yet, and leave your amazing comments down below. I hope you all are staying safe and staying at home, and I will see you guys again very soon in my next video.